Hello and welcome to our Equality of Opportunity in Action event series. I'm Rick Wade, Senior Vice President for Strategic Alliances and Outreach here at the United States Chamber of Commerce. Let me first extend a special thank you to Chase for Business for supporting this program here today and for their partnership in advocating for an advancing equality of opportunity across our country. We're here to discuss second chance hiring, a very important topic, and the economic opportunity that is sitting literally on the sidelines for millions of Americans and businesses. Through our America's Work initiative, the United States Chamber is advocating for federal and state policy changes to help train more Americans for high demand jobs and remove barriers to employment for workers, including those formerly incarcerated. As we often say, there are millions of people without jobs and jobs without people. Listen, an estimated 70 million people in the United States have an arrest or conviction record. Barriers to hiring and a lack of access to educational resources have left many formerly incarcerated Americans marginalized and unable to participate fully in our labor market and economy. Building pathways for these individuals can help them grow and prosper, will strengthen our communities and help companies tap into an often underutilized talent pool. So today we'll host some conversations with policymakers, business leaders, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs who are involved in this very important work. They'll share their insights and the tangible steps that they're taking to leverage the power of second chance hiring by providing inmates and ex-offenders the training and support they need to re-enter the workforce. So to set the stage, join me in welcoming Chirag Bains, Special Assistant to the President for Criminal Justice and Guns Policy at the White House Domestic Policy Council. Please join me in welcoming Chirag.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Chirag, let's jump right in. We released a report today called The Business Case for Criminal Justice Reform, Second Chance Hiring. And, one of the things I was noticing that I read that, more than 600,000 people return to their communities from state and federal prisons every year. And clearly it has to be overwhelming for those who are formerly incarcerated, as well as their families and communities, especially even during a pandemic. So set the stage, how is the administration working to support second chance hiring for these individuals in our society?
Rick, you identified that key stat there, 600,000 people returning from prison. Those numbers are disproportionately Black and brown people, affecting communities of color, low-income communities, and actually really just communities across the United States. We all have a stake in making sure that people can re-enter their communities successfully. And that's why I'm so grateful for the Chamber to take this opportunity to focus on these issues and give us an opportunity to speak about it. We're a year and a half into this COVID-19 pandemic. And as we work toward an equitable recovery, we must serve more justice-involved, incarcerated, previously incarcerated, at-risk youth, young adults, and adults. That means ensuring that returning citizens can get the supportive services they need, the career counseling, the training, and the industry-recognized credentials that they need to get a quality job. It also means working with employers, informing employers about opportunities to provide second chances, and addressing barriers to employment for this population. This is a major priority for President Biden and the whole Biden-Harris administration. We are moving policy on a number of different fronts that I think we're going to get into in a moment, but I just want to emphasize, as a matter of priority, this issue is right up there at the top for us.
Well, thank you. That's very, very exciting to hear. And, as a former official myself in government at the U.S. Department of Commerce, there are just vast resources and efforts that agencies make and are making to drive success here. Tell us about some of the work that agencies are doing to help create opportunities for returning citizens.
Well, the Biden-Harris administration is already taking a number of actions to help those with convictions find employment. I'll give you a few examples. One is the incredible work of the Department of Labor. Just recently in June, the Department of Labor awarded $85.5 million to help formerly incarcerated individuals in more than 24 communities around the country secured jobs. This is done through a program called the Reentry Employment Opportunities Program. It's grants to cities and regions to help returning citizens transition into the workforce and connect to a good job. The grants generally go to community, faith-based organizations, as well as local governments to provide career services, basic skills education, job training, counseling, and supportive services that help people find opportunity post-release. There is a $60 million program called Pathways Home that I urge folks who are watching this to check out. It supports workforce development and service providers to go behind the prison walls to proactively provide services to people who are still incarcerated. That transition has to start during incarceration. It's not enough to wait till people are post-release. There's also a $25 million program called the Young Adult Reentry Partnership, or YARP program. That's a grant program that invests in community-based partnerships to improve employment opportunities for and outcomes for young adults who are at risk or who have been involved with the criminal justice system. There's an educational component and there's an occupational training component as well. And just to give you some scope, in the last couple of years, these grants through the RIO program, we call it Reentry Employment Opportunities Program, have served over 24,000 justice-involved people and provided those opportunities for employment and training. So, DOL, Department of Labor, is a big player here. We are trying to build on that. The president's Build Back Better agenda requests an additional $100 million in fiscal year 2022. That's doubling the size of the program. That's thousands of more people that we can serve and scale up this program. We're also looking at our own practices. The federal government should be a model employer and should prioritize employment opportunities, making sure that there are not barriers to people who have conviction records when those are not appropriate. The Office of Personnel Management is going to be publishing proposed regulations for implementing the Fair Chance Act, which bans the box in federal employers and contractor hiring. That's that box on the application that you sometimes have to check off, indicating if you have conviction history. And it screens out a lot of qualified, formerly incarcerated applicants. Under ban the box, the employer doesn't ask about conviction history or criminal history until giving a conditional offer of employment. And then at that point, they're really looking at, this is someone we want, and is the conviction really job related, and should it be a barrier to employment? We're also exploring what barriers exist and whether there should be some sort of special pathway created for temporary hiring of people with convictions within the federal government. The last thing I'll mention here is the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. A lot of employers don't know about this, but it's a tax credit that allows employers to receive a credit of up to $2,400 to hire someone within a year of their felony conviction or release from incarceration for a felony. And in fiscal year 2020, that Work Opportunity Tax Credit supported second chance hiring for 69,000 previously incarcerated people. We are working to increase awareness of this program. This year, the Department of Treasury and the Department of Labor are updating guidance, and we'll be providing technical assistance to state workforce agencies so they can help employers understand that this credit is there to take advantage of.
Chirag, thank you. What amazing array of resources. It sounds like a whole government effort here to help create and advance opportunities for those formerly incarcerated. Let me also mention to all of our audience members, please feel free to submit questions. We'll have a moment at the end to hopefully entertain as many as we can. So you can submit questions in the chat. Chirag, one of the other areas that obviously the U.S. Chamber, we're about business and advancing entrepreneurship. And I think we'll hear from a panelist in the program who actually started his own business. And so that is another pathway too, as we think about workforce, the idea that a lot of these individuals are innovative and interested in starting their own companies. I was at a restaurant yesterday and unfortunately couldn't enter because there was a sign that says we're closed temporarily because we need more help. We need more employees. And I referenced earlier that it's just evident that there's a workforce shortage. We have 10 million jobs open and 9 million people looking for work. Can you speak to the opportunity here to not only help people return to work, but why this is important for business and industry in America?
Absolutely. It's an incredible point. This recovery is going to require uh, employers to take advantage of labor pools that have been untapped, and people with convictions have been an underutilized labor pool. A lot of these folks are able to do the job and they just need a chance. And that's why we're so interested in working with employers. It's a priority for the administration, but this is not something that can be done by government alone. We need partners in the private sector. And we're interested in building on the ban the box work that I mentioned, that President Obama launched several years ago. That there was an employer challenge there, a pledge that encouraged business leaders to ban the box. And the field has done incredible work with there. I'm sure folks who are tuning in are familiar with that because a lot of businesses have banned the box. We would like to encourage business leaders to go further, to take affirmative steps to create a pipeline for formerly incarcerated people to come into their companies. There are models that have been launched in different parts of the country where there are deep partnerships between nonprofit organizations that identify people with convictions, that give them the wraparound services they need, help them understand how to apply for a job, how to be competitive, give them the skills training they need to secure that job, and continue to work with them because it's not just hiring, it's also retention and promotion. There need to be pathways for advancement. I think there's a huge opportunity here. We're trying to think about what we can do and very interested in hearing from folks in the private sector about what would be helpful to assist their efforts. The bottom line here, to use that phrase, is that employing people with conviction history can help companies' bottom line. Right? This is not about charity. This is good business. Ambassador Susan Rice of the Domestic Policy Council and I had the opportunity to speak with a group of leaders from the formerly incarcerated community in a listening session a few months ago. And to a person, they were capable, passionate, and driven. And when you look beyond the stigma, many of these Americans who have made mistakes, sometimes very serious mistakes, but who have served their time, have so much to offer. We have a chance to drive this transformation, and it can do so much for companies, for our economy, and for every community in America.
Thank you. Well, we have an audience here today of business owners and employers across America who obviously are very interested and committed to hiring those formerly incarcerated. And you're right, it's not about charity, but this is about business. There is a business case. One other very important component of our society are nonprofit organizations. I'm curious about how do you think about the role of nonprofit organizations in helping to advance these opportunities?
Yeah, well, as I was saying, I think that nonprofit organizations are critical here because I've spoken to a lot of leaders from the corporate sector, small business owners as well, and many of them say we are willing to hire people. We just don't have access to them, or we don't know where they are, or we don't know how to advertise to that population in particular. And a lot of the applicants think that they wouldn't be considered, that it would be a dead end. And so nonprofit organizations can be a critical resource to solving both of those barriers. And I think what we need more of here is to invest in those services, to identify people who have convictions, offer them services so that they know that there are opportunities and what it'll take to take advantage of those opportunities, and to work in direct partnership with employers. Just as an example, I've heard from JP Morgan Chase in the past about a deliberate partnership that they've had in Chicago to work with nonprofit organizations to start to create a pipeline and hire people with arrest and conviction history. That's just one company. There are many others out there, and small businesses have been doing this for quite some time. They're deeper in the community, and they're in many cases more able to identify and give a chance to people with convictions. So I think the nonprofits play a big role here. It's one of the reasons that we're interested in scaling up government funding for reentry programs, and it's something we'll continue to do. And if I might, Rick, I just want to comment on your other point about entrepreneurship. A lot of these individuals, people with convictions, are great business people. They have ideas. They want to start businesses. We want to support that. And the Small Business Administration is doing what it can right now and wants to push itself to do more to support entrepreneurship. One change that we made during this administration is we eliminated an exclusionary restriction that prevented existing small business owners from getting access to Paycheck Protection Program loans, those PPP loans. There was a barrier, a sort of categorical barrier for anyone with any kind of felony conviction in the past year from accessing those loans. And that didn't serve our economy, and it wasn't related to, there was no real business case for it. So we eliminated that restriction. But one other thing that we're doing is the Small Business Administration is investing in its Community Navigator pilot program. That's a new program that'll be launched next month, and it helps to reach underserved small businesses, women, people of color, veterans, rural entrepreneurs, and that can also be of assistance to people with convictions. It's a $100 million pilot program. It's funded by the American Rescue Plan that the president fought so hard to pass, and it'll create a network of trusted organizations, local governments, and community champions who can leverage their direct access to small businesses to help them navigate resources at all stages as they grow their business.
Chirag, I was just thinking about one of our conversation before we started. You talked about the impact in terms of in communities, reducing recidivism and enhancing public safety. I mean, these are very, very important, impactful outcomes. How do you view pathways to getting to those goals, and what can we as the business community do to help with that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Rick. This priority of employment opportunities for people with convictions, it's a matter of supporting reentry and second chances. It's a matter of equity. It is also a matter of improving public safety. Look, we are all deeply concerned about the spike in gun crime that we're seeing around the country. Over the past 18 months, we have seen shootings rise in cities across the nation. And in June, the president announced a comprehensive strategy to prevent and respond to this rise in gun crime. There are many different pieces of it that involve going after rogue gun dealers and investing in violence interruption in communities. One of the key components of that strategy is finding ways to increase employment opportunities for people with convictions. We know that good, stable jobs reduce recidivism and promote public safety. We know that formerly incarcerated people face an uphill climb in getting those jobs. So as the president has often noted, we can't just give someone who was locked up a bus ticket, and $25 and expect them to land on their feet. That's not going to cut it. We have to invest in these pathways, and we will all benefit from it.
Chirag, I want to just take one quick question, and then we'll end and turn it over to our next panel. But one question that was interesting, how should highly regulated companies looking to hire second chance applicants manage federal regulations if applicants would fail, say, background checks? An example here is airport workers. How do we think about that?
Yeah, that's a real concern. There are regulations, there are some barriers, and sometimes those barriers are there for a reason and worth keeping, but it's not always the case. So not long ago, there was a change made to FDIC rules to allow people to work in the financial sector where convictions or arrest history didn't go to anything job related. They weren't for offenses of dishonesty or fraud or anything of that nature. We are very interested in hearing about other barriers, talking to an incredible audience here. If you're an employer out there and you're facing barriers that you think are unrelated, or basically that screen out people for reasons that are unrelated to the job, please let us know. We're very eager to move policy to take down unnecessary barriers and promote employment opportunities for people with convictions and who are formerly incarcerated.
Well, Chirag, let me just end by referencing one last point from the report that we released today, the business case for second chance hiring, which says that economists estimate that the GDP is reduced between $78 billion and $87 billion due to excluding formerly incarcerated job seekers from the workforce. We are with you in this together, the business community across America. I want to thank you, Chirag Bains, Special Assistant to the President for Criminal Justice and Guns Policy at the White House Domestic Policy Office, for joining us today in this very important conversation. We look forward to working with you in the months and years to come. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rick. Likewise, I appreciate it.
And I look forward now to turning this over to my colleague, Glenn Spencer, Senior Vice President here at the U.S. Chamber for Employment Policy. Welcome, Glenn Spencer.
Good afternoon. I'm Glenn Spencer, Senior Vice President of the Chamber's Employment Policy Division. I want to thank Rick and Chirag for a great discussion around what the administration is doing to further second chance hiring. Now, we're going to switch gears now to our panel discussion. Unfortunately, one of our panelists, Charlotte Smith, who has personally benefited from second chance hiring, is unable to join us. She actually has a conflict with her work responsibilities, but we're hoping to record a session with her later this week so we can add that to the online event posting so that you all have a chance to hear her story. Now, when we think about second chance hiring at the Chamber, there are several different lenses through which we see this. First, as an employer organization, we look at it from a workforce perspective. As you heard from Rick, there are more than 10 million job openings right now. And we hear from every business we talk to every day that they can't find enough people. You see it personally when you see signs at a business, as Rick referenced, that the business is closing early due to a lack of workers. So to ignore a large and underutilized pool of labor is just a wasted opportunity to help fill those gaps. There's, of course, a societal benefit in terms of lowering recidivism, and the benefits, obviously, to individuals themselves of reconnecting with society. And from the perspective of the Equality of Opportunity Initiative, obviously, we know that African Americans have a disproportionate involvement with the criminal justice system. Finally, I'd mention just a simple perspective of math. As we heard from Rick, 600,000 people a year will be released from prison. They're coming home. And it's in everyone's interest to ensure that these individuals have a place to go and a job to connect with. If we don't do that, all we're doing is waiting for the revolving door to take them right back to prison somewhere down the road. And that would be a tragic waste of human potential. So we have an excellent set of panelists to discuss second chance hiring. And what I'd really like for people to take away from this discussion is how to get started on this path. I'm sure there's some of you watching today who understand how important this is, but you just don't know where to begin. By the time we're done, I'm hopeful that you will know how to begin. So I'm going to give each of our panelists a minute to introduce themselves. And Erin, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Glenn. So great to be here. Erin Fletcher. I am the Director of Program Management for our HR programs at Walmart, for Walmart US stores, everything from hiring to day one onboarding to the performance management cycle. So that end-to-end associate experience. I got started in the second chance hiring space as a part of the hiring work that I lead at Walmart. And am able to serve on our criminal justice shared value network to, again, further our mission to reduce incarceration, reduce recidivism, and the work that we're doing in the second chance hiring space at Walmart absolutely achieves those goals. So great to be here, excited to share what our journey has been.
Now we'll switch from a large employer to a small business, a very local small business. So Tyrone, I want to turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Yes, how you doing today? I'm very excited to be here. My name is Tyrone White. I'm the owner of MLK Deli, located in Washington, D.C. I'm on my fourth location. I started in 2017, and 90% of my employees are reoccurring two-time felons or second chance offenders. I think is very amazing and everything that we have conquered so far to hire and employ these people, because I was once one of those people. So I'm just very excited to be here and tell our story.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today. And Kevin, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself from the nonprofit side of the equation.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And Glenn, thank you and your team for teeing this up. It was obvious in our pre-conversations that you and all of your staff are deeply engaged in this work. I even made the comment, it sounded like a bunch of social service workers, not chamber members, chamber executives. But 22 years ago, I left corporate America and started a nonprofit with building affordable housing. And we ran into something really unique. We kept running into a lot of young folks at the job that would come to us needing work, didn't know anything about recidivism or our criminal justice system, but we saw a trend. And over the first 2-3 years back in 1999 through 2001, we were hiring a lot of folks coming out of our Duval County jail. And unbeknownst to us, they weren't coming back with the numbers that we know kind of in America today, with about 70% within 3 years. We got a grant in 2003 with President Bush to launch through the Department of Labor an initiative to study the impact that a job would have on our folks, keeping them out of the system. What's been neat about it is it really made a case in our city. And in 2008, I wrote legislation, one of the first, if not the first, ban the box. We didn't call it ban the box then. But what we do is a city that we needed to lead by example, and that our largest employer was city government. And so we did that. And then 5 years ago, our chamber became one of the first, if not the first, in America to develop an initiative called Project Open Door. First year, it was hard to get one employer. With the success we had in making the case, now we have over 450 employers in our city that have agreed to hire. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to help try to promote the concept of ban the box and employment for a population that so deserves a second chance.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. For my first question, Aaron, I want to turn back to you and get some of your perspective as a large multinational employer. Obviously, you're in all 50 states. So how did you, as a company, decide that you wanted to go down this path, that you wanted to get started with second chance hiring, and really tell us how you got started?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been said, but I'll say it again. There's so many benefits, right? So I think it's one of those that once you understand that it's good for individuals, that it's good for communities, that it's good for, the society, and also there's this great business benefit to it. It's one of those where you say, okay, I understand. Now how? How do I get started? Where do I begin? And so I would say our second chance employment efforts are just what we're currently doing are an evolution to how we've actually supported the hiring and advancement of formerly incarcerated individuals for years. From Ban the Box, that was something that, we got on back in, I think, 2010. So it's definitely been something that's, we haven't had to, our pilots that we're running now, we haven't had to do a whole lot of policy or practice changes in the hiring space. It's just now we're kind of plussing up on that journey. But I'll say that journey was accelerated through the establishment of our shared value networks that I kind of mentioned I'm a part of currently. So we have a health, finance, education, and criminal justice shared value network that were established in 2020. Specifically, the criminal justice, segment was selected as a shared value network because there's work to do as the business and the intersection of, the criminal justice system meet. It really gives us an opportunity to make a difference and do something about it. And so we, in addition to the, again, ban the box work, continuing to reduce bias out of hiring processes, and just introducing our circumstance review process in all 50 states, like you mentioned. It's not required in all 50, but our individualized circumstance review process is something that we have in all 50 states in which we operate. We again said, how do we take this a step further? And that really led us to wanting to do some place-based partnership pilots. So again, what we have done is we want to know, could we learn from partnering with community-based organizations, nonprofits, even the U.S. Probation Office in sourcing candidates, providing those wraparound services to them, like interview prep, application support, housing, transportation, skills, skill building, all in an effort to, again, boost that pipeline, boost that flow of applicants. We need them. I think we can all agree we need them right now. But how do we tap into them in ways where we're setting them up for success, creating those pathways to employment, creating those pathways to promotion once they're in the door, strengthen that place-based nonprofit partnership so that, again, the reentrants are supported as they enter society and as they enter employment and as they enter, hopefully, the career advancement that they have with Walmart. So that's really kind of how we got involved. So again, like I said, we're right now in the stage of testing those place-based partnerships in Atlanta, Dallas, and Chicago. And really trying to figure out how do we build the Walmart capabilities and the nonprofit capabilities in those partnerships to allow us to be able to scale this.
Now, Aaron, you mentioned the circumstances review process during your answer. So I want to drill down on that just a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means and how it works?
Yeah, it's great. So, many of our roles require a background check. And so once an individual goes through that background check, that's sort of not the end, right? They have another chance. And so the circumstance review process comes after the background check as a way in which the individual can actually state their, again, individual circumstances, to put it simply, but what rehabilitation has occurred. At the time of the conviction, this was my circumstance, this was my situation. Since then, I have done and taken these steps. I've worked with this organization. I've taken these classes. My situation is different, and again, it's I'm showing that I have rehabilitated, and that is individually reviewed by a team. And each individual, they look at, length, how long it's been since the conviction, and just, again, so many individual things. And then that allows us to say, yeah, you really have shown such growth. And we're able to move forward with employment and get them started.
I think that's really important because obviously there's a place for background checks and there's a legitimate use for background checks, but it shouldn't be a disqualifier, right? And I think that's the whole idea behind Ban the Box, is that you shouldn't just disregard people right out of the gate. You do need to hear about their individual circumstances. So Tyrone, I want to turn to you because you've got some unique individual circumstances. You actually started your own business and then decided to have that business engage in second chance hiring. So tell us a little bit about how you got your business started and how second chance hiring has worked out for you.
Well, first and foremost, I had to identify my target market and understand what was needed in the community. And in order to change things in the community, I felt like creating jobs was the thing to do to stop violence and crime. If you give someone a job and show them certain skill sets and proper training, that we can all be successful getting a second chance. So I know in Ward 8 and Ward 7 in Washington, D.C. is a food desert. So I knew the need for the community was to create something like a deli or some type of food restaurant or something like that to bring to the community. So that's what I did. I worked with a couple people that were experienced in the food industry, and then I hired a couple people from the community, and then we started like that. And
you've now grown to 4 locations in DC, yes, is that right?
So I'm on my 4th location. I have a location in the Washington Convention Center, and I have another location at the Mystics Arena. And I'm working on my 4th location in Ward 7, another food desert that's needed in the community for food because there's no restaurants or there's no food options in the Ward 7 and Ward 8 community.
Right, that's great. I wish our 4th panelist, Charlotte, could have been with us today, because then she could sort of tell her individual story about getting hired and reconnecting with the community. So Kevin, I'm going to kind of ask you to fill both roles there, to tell us a little bit about your work and then maybe also to reflect on some of what Charlotte might have experienced in the process. So tell us how you identify individuals who are going to be coming out of the system, that are going to be needing to look for work, and how you connect them with employers.
Well, thank you, Glenn. And, we, over the years, learned that, we've got folks coming out of jails and prisons and all over, and most states are real similar. Folks are going to be located wherever there's an empty bed in prison, jail. So I've got staff doing pre-release work in the facilities to really get a sense of where they are, what they're doing, what they're working on. And so we have a flow coming in every week, starting Monday with a new orientation. But let me kind of back into a little bit what we learned that was going to be key for us when we all learned and our board learned that this issue in America with regards to what's happening with our criminal justice system really hasn't been an issue of morality. It's really been more of an issue of poverty. And when we really, because we had data that showed it early on, the power of a job and what that meant, we had this epiphany. And really, for a social agency, we had to ask ourselves the question, who really is our customer? And if we're really sincere and intentional about getting jobs and getting employers on board, which early on was hard, we needed to be thinking along the lines of how our employers are thinking, what would they need? I'll give you a quick story. We brought 12 of our biggest CEOs together in 2001, had a facilitator, and they asked the question, would you be willing to hire people with a record? And their answer was, they started laughing. And he said, okay, we'll sit back and take a breath. Let me rephrase that. What would it need to look like in order for you to hire somebody that has a record? And it went around the room. One person said, I need somebody who's going to be on time. I need somebody who's going to be dressed properly, pass a drug test, a good attitude, works with others. And I'm writing all of this down. And when they finished, I just simply said to the group, if I can find that person that meets those categories that you talked about, would you be willing to hire? And not one or two, every single one of those people who were CEOs that before said no, said absolutely. And so what we began right around the turn of the 2001 and 2 was building a system working backwards with the employer in mind. The employer says, my bar is here for employment. And then we develop programming that would prepare our folks and make sure that our folks coming in were ready for the job. And what that looks like is it's 4 weeks of, we call it basic training, if you would, ready for work, is you've got to be here Monday through Friday. We're going to take you through a module, 29 modules of employability, getting along with others. What does a good employee look like? Emotional maturity. They're assigned a case manager or job coach that are with each of our people for a year. We realized early on housing was an issue. All of the barriers that were spoken, I think, by Mr. Bain or Mr. Wade earlier, we needed to address those. And so you can't just do our work in isolation. It takes the community engaged, our public defender, state attorney that are all working to give us and give them a chance. And so today, as I mentioned, employers really look at us as a social human resource department that are vetting, preparing, and walking through, the process for the first year with our clients. And our retention has been incredible. The recidivism rate, as you talked about, I wish I could say that it was something great we did. It was really giving folks a pathway to that good job that has really sustained them through and the success that they needed to be successful upon release.
So Kevin, a follow-up for you. You're based in Florida. I know you started in Jacksonville. You're now in a number of other cities. And so employers in those cities, they can reach out directly to you and get connected and figure out how to find this talent pool. But that doesn't exist everywhere. So if I'm an employer in another part of the country, I don't necessarily have an organization like yours to turn to, or maybe there is one, I'm just not aware of it. How should an employer in another part of the country go about this? How do they find somebody to connect with? Or if they can't find somebody to connect with, what should they do anyway?
Well, that's a great question, Glenn. And I would say that first thing, a couple of things that are really important that we've seen in this last 10 years. It's really important that companies' HR teams really understand what's involved in this hiring practice. First of all, I think understanding what ban the box is still a lot of companies that don't understand. They think that means that we're totally going to ban the opportunity to look and see a person's background, which it's not. But when the gatekeepers, I call them, are on board with the hiring goals of really looking and digging into that, that's important. Then I think the platform that we're seeing a lot of companies that are using today, because we're doing it with our clients coming through, are really using LinkedIn. using LinkedIn to be a way of getting the word out. The companies post on LinkedIn that they are a second chance hire that will, be available. We've got a number of employers that even go with us, and I hear this in other cities, that are going in and working with the prisons to be able to go in and work with staff to find out, as I think earlier was stated, what did they take advantage of while they were in? Did they get education? Were they willing to participate? Did they have disciplinary write-ups? So employers are getting really creative when you look at this undercurrent of close to 70 million men and women, that are under the radar screen, and getting creative. So I think there's one, the questions that we need to ask, and having the HR team on board. LinkedIn is a great way of doing that. There's my staff sent a note to me earlier on another LinkedIn position that was talking about, different ways on LinkedIn to diversify your talent pool. So LinkedIn, we found is a great resource. But I think one of the keys is in the interview is getting the reputation out in the community that the company has an open door policy. In our chamber, they call it Project Open Door, and companies through the chamber have really advertised. Matter of fact, what our CEO, who's a good friend of mine, has done, has a website, Project Open Door. You can go online and see it. Lists all the companies that are willing to participate. And so I think, collaborating more with the chamber to formalize the process can really, really be helpful, if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. And that sort of fits into one of the questions we got in the chat box, which was about how you can create some sort of one-stop shop nationally that, all kinds of different employers can tap into when they don't have someone like you right nearby. And that's maybe something at the chamber we need to think a little bit more about. So Aaron, I want to switch to you, and then Tyrone, I'll have another question for you as well. So Aaron, you've been engaged in this work for a while. Can you give us a sense of things that have worked well, things that maybe haven't worked as well, some of the lessons learned?
Yeah, absolutely. So many learnings, I'll tell you. I think one of the things that we're proud of at Walmart is that we got started, that we got after the learnings, that, we stepped out and started to take action in this space. But I will tell you that there have been, learnings absolutely along the way. Probably helps to share, I think it starts with leadership buy-in, right? That tone from the top, it helps remove roadblocks as you might be making changes to your hiring practices and policies, that you have the right stakeholders to, move things forward, and, again, help you get through the roadblocks to bring this to life, right? Because there's socialization that has to take place. There's, executive support that's needed. And it, it helps to have that leadership buy-in. So, again, kind of start with that. I'd move into probably saying one of the big learnings was how do we go into actually identifying locations and partners to work with as we test this sort of place-based wraparound services model. And so for us, it was, we needed to come up with a methodology on how are we going to know what those best locations are? How are we going to understand what who in the community could help support being a source of pipeline for us? And so, everything from assessing what the business need is in each of our markets, we wanted to look at, hey, is our market leadership strong in those places? Because they're going to need to be able to manage, different questions that come up. And so we need them to be strong. We need the strength of the wraparound services to be strong as well. So we researched what are their, organization's mission? What are their primary services offered? How many individuals do they serve annually? And again, what does the local government support look like to continue to remove the barriers to these things? And so all of that went into kind of that, how do I identify where and who to work with? And then I would say, again, the last learning, and then I'll give a bonus best practice, is preparing our field leaders and our frontline hiring managers. Luckily, we had the groundwork laid in terms of our hiring practices. So we didn't have to teach new hiring practices. But there is some myth busting around this population that had to take place. There was some empathy training that we provided so that, our hiring managers could understand the individuals, how they might be feeling, that were directly impacted by the legal system. And then, just to be able to provide insights into the role they play as the hiring manager versus the role that the community-based organizations play to support us. And so we took the community-based partners through a store tour and got them to understand our roles, our culture, what we needed, the expectations of, who they might be referring to us as a pipeline. So again, everyone was on the same page. And so bonus learning, we set up a monthly community practice meeting between our hiring managers, our field leadership, and the community-based organizations. And that has been a critical enabler of the success of the program. So it's amazing when you kind of remove, me sitting here in, Bentonville, Arkansas, and the folks in Atlanta who have the hiring needs, and the organizations start connecting on a monthly basis and start sharing what they're learning, what they're hearing. It makes this a sustainable thing and not just a program. And that's what we're really excited to be seeing happening right now.
Great, thanks. We are just about out of time, but Tyrone, I want to give one more question to you to wrap up. So as you mentioned, you were formerly incarcerated. You've come through the system. What were the biggest challenges you faced on reentry? What were the things that you needed as an individual that maybe you didn't get or you did get? Or what are some things that we need to be thinking about from the purely individual perspective?
Well, learning and getting educated, more resources in the community. But through all that and all, just investing in people and investing in the community. We have done extremely well within the last 4 years, and not to only mention, we have this year got the 2021 business small business DC Chamber of Commerce award. So, it's just identifying and changing the narrative, and only you can change. If you want to change, it's up to you, and we get more people and more leaders in the community, and everything will go well.
I feel like this panel could probably go on for another 45 minutes or an hour. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we're going to have to wrap this up. But I really want to thank all of you for participating today. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our esteemed panel. I'm Latricia Boone, Vice President of the Equality of Opportunity Initiative here at the United States Chamber of Commerce. And I want to invite a special guest with JP Morgan Chase to share more about a hiring model they've implemented that is working to break down barriers for those with criminal backgrounds and provide an inclusive hiring process across their enterprise. Welcome to the stage, Monique Batiste, Vice President, Workforce Readiness at JP Morgan Chase. Monique, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm going to jump right in and be mindful of our time. I know JP Morgan has made a commitment to second chance hiring from leadership down, and you've been leveraging this approach to hiring for some time, recently expanding your efforts to Columbus, Ohio. Can you share more about the design of JP Morgan's model and where it's been implemented? And maybe, what were some of your initial goals that you had in implementing this model?
Yes, absolutely. And again, it's a pleasure to be part of this important conversation. When we started our work, what was mentioned earlier in the panel is it really started with our top-down leadership and our commitment from the very top of the organization. Jamie Dimon made a very public statement through our letter to the shareholders, really committing and making the business case for hiring individuals with criminal backgrounds where those backgrounds pose no risk to the firm, and really where those individuals really present capacity to meet the demands of the role. And so from that, we really started off our work by evaluating our own system, evaluating our policies and practices, doing things like removing the question of criminal background from our applications firm-wide. And then from that point, having cleared out all the barriers that our systems may present to candidates, that's when we really wanted to test our efforts. I mean, by this point, we in I believe it's 2019 and 2020, about 10% of our annual hiring firm-wide are individuals with criminal backgrounds. And we really wanted to make sure we were doing the most that we could to create opportunities. And so in 2019, we also launched a community-based pilot, very similar to what our friends at Walmart have mentioned, where we established partnerships with community organizations who really serve as our kind of talent pipeline source, and could work with individuals with criminal histories directly to navigate through our process. Our recruiters work closely with those organizations. Those organizations are critical friends and thought partners to help us continue to make changes and continue to lower the barriers of entry. And it's proven successful. I mean, when we first launched our effort on community-based hiring models in Chicago in 2019, it's resulted in nearly a third of our hiring from that particular talent pipeline being individuals with criminal histories. And so we've really seen promise in, establishing these community-based partnerships. It provides great support to the individuals and any challenges that come up as they move forward. There's also legal partners that are involved in that work in the event that there are kind of record clearing efforts that are necessary as well. It's just something that we are excited to continue to grow in markets across the country.
Yeah, I appreciate you really underscoring the importance of partnerships, public-private partnerships, in the success of this approach. Can you share, we have businesses, we have entrepreneurs listening into this conversation who might be either exploring, thinking about this as a hiring practice, or, they're doing this work already and just want to strengthen and, expand potentially. Can you share maybe 2 to 3 tangible takeaways or considerations for folks who are thinking about this as a potential model for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the first resources that we tapped into when we were exploring this work across the enterprise was SHRM's Getting Talent Back to Work toolkit that was released a few years ago. That really helped us kind of think through how we could both structure our pipelines and our HR efforts, as well as how we wanted to approach, I think, the second resource, which was our Second Chance Business Coalition, which we launched earlier this year in tandem with the launch of our Columbus, Ohio hiring model and partnership. And then I'd say finally, there are a number of national organizations out there. We've worked with Safer Foundation in Chicago. We've worked with the Center for Employment Opportunities, which has locations across the country, who have all really been fantastic advisors and have been great talent partnerships or talent partners as well. So in every community, there's an organization that works with this population. In every community, there's a workforce development system that is community-centered that can be fantastic partners to build really effective talent pipelines. And so I would really suggest find those individuals, find those organizations, build relationships, and co-design the model in a way that's responsive to that community and that labor market, so you can really get the best outcomes.
Yeah, thank you. Again, co-designing partnerships. And I also appreciate you talking about the Society for Human Resources Management's toolkit as another option or opportunity for a resource. So as we wrap up this conversation, just like our panel, I feel like we could go on forever, but I hope we'll have other opportunities to bring you to our stage to dig in more deeply. One other question I want to ask is around the policy side of things. Can you talk a bit more about how or if JP Morgan Chase is engaging or advocating for any particular policy solutions? You've been in this space, you've done this work, so you have some experience and can understand what might drive real sustainable change and have lasting impacts.
Yeah, I mean, it rolls out state by state. We are big advocates of clean slate and how that's rolling out state by state. So definitely encourage all chambers to look into that and join those coalitions. There's a number of different states. I'm thinking Delaware, Illinois. There's a number of different states that are really leading the way in that. And so we've lent our voice to those efforts. And then I think, there is a lot of activity on the federal policy level that really, with the First Step Act, that really is aiming to remove some of these barriers as well. So definitely tap into organizations like the National Employment Law Project that really can kind of outline state by state and then at the federal level what the agenda looks like to advance this.
Thank you. Thank you again, Monique. Really appreciate the conversation, the insights you've shared with us today. And we're looking forward to more opportunities to partner with and learn from the work that JP Morgan Chase is doing. We'll now transition to our closing remarks. But Monique, did you have one last thing you wanted to share with the group?
Just to say, this is laudable work. And I'm glad to see everyone who's joined that understands the business imperative of this effort. So we are always looking for partners. We are always looking for allies. So definitely, please continue to keep the fight. And we're really looking forward to moving this work ahead.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you everyone for joining us today for this crucial conversation. I'm Jenna Shrove, Director of Policy and Special Initiatives here at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I want to especially thank our speakers and panelists for sharing some very important insights and tangible takeaways for driving meaningful progress in second chance hiring and opportunities for returning citizens. I also want to thank Chase for Business for sponsoring this event. A key to closing the jobs gap is expanding the workforce. As we heard in today's forum, there are various barriers government can help remove to enable more Americans to seek and successfully attain employment. Working with the private sector, the government can support employment opportunities for formerly incarcerated individuals through second chance hiring opportunities, ban the box laws, occupational licensing reform, and other initiatives. Our America Works initiative, launched in June, calls upon lawmakers to address immediate employer needs while also laying the foundation for a modernized, adaptive, and resilient workforce development system. We've identified second chance hiring opportunities as a critical pillar for removing barriers to entry to the workforce. The criminal justice system disproportionately impacts communities of color. Through our Equality of Opportunity initiative, we are actively developing and advancing solutions that help close race-based opportunity gaps by uniting the business community around data-driven business and policy solutions to ensure that Black Americans and people of color have greater opportunities to succeed. We are truly honored to bring together today's speakers for this very important and inspiring conversation. Connecting returning citizens with employment is critical, providing a secure income, stability, and connection with other members of society. We here at the U.S. Chamber are committed to carrying these issues beyond today's conversation to ensure we can continue to build on the solutions and best practices shared here today. Thank you again for joining us. Visit uschamber.com to find out more about the Equality of Opportunity and America Works initiatives and how you can partner or engage with us as we work to build an inclusive economy and realize true progress for the business community and our nation. Thank you.